Have you ever noticed how a single thought can stay with you long after it first appeared? Maybe it was a passing worry that clung to you like a shadow, shaping the tone of your entire day. Or perhaps it was a brief moment of gratitude that lifted your spirit, making ordinary things seem lighter, softer, more alive. Thoughts are like that. They are small and subtle, often overlooked, yet powerful enough to change the atmosphere of our inner world. They do not simply arrive and disappear. They plant themselves like seeds in the soil of the mind, and with enough attention, they take root and grow. Some blossom into peace, compassion, or joy, while others tangle into weeds of fear, resentment, or despair. And whether we notice it or not, our minds are always tending a garden, always cultivating something from the seeds that find their way into our awareness. The Buddha once whispered a truth that has echoed for centuries. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. He did not mean this as a metaphor for dreamers or poets. He meant it as a direct and practical teaching. The mind is fertile, alive, endlessly creative, and it listens to everything we allow inside it. Every thought, no matter how small, is a seed. Some seeds are given to us intentionally, chosen through practice, seeds of patience, kindness, forgiveness, and hope. Others fall without our awareness, carried by old memories, habits, or the voices of people who once shaped us. And the soil of the mind does not discriminate. It will nurture whatever falls within it, whether it is nourishing or destructive. This is why awareness is so important. Without awareness, we may spend years watering seeds of fear and regret, while ignoring the tiny blossoms of joy waiting quietly in the corners of our being. Think for a moment of a real garden. If you plant roses, you expect roses. If you scatter wildflowers, you expect color and fragrance. But if thistles are left to grow unchecked, they soon overtake the beauty and fill the space with thorns. The mind works the same way. If we feed worry again and again, if we replay old hurts and judgments, then those vines of thought grow thicker and stronger until they wrap around our lives, making everything feel smaller, tighter, harder to breathe within. But if we remember to water seeds of compassion, if we pause to feel gratitude even for one small thing, then the garden of the mind begins to soften. Peace begins to rise like blossoms in the morning sun. The quiet work of thought is often invisible at first. Just as the roots of a seed push into the soil long before a stem reaches for the light, our thoughts begin shaping our lives quietly beneath the surface. A harsh word we carry in our chest may become self-doubt years later. A kind smile we remember from a stranger may become the courage to open our heart again. We rarely notice how much influence a single seed of thought can hold until we look back and see how much it has grown. Have you ever carried an unkind belief about yourself? Perhaps something you would never say to a friend, yet you repeated it silently each day. Did you notice how it began to shape not only your mood, but your posture, your choices, even the way you looked at the world? And on the other hand, have you ever taken one deep breath in a moment of stress, reminding yourself to be gentle, and felt how that one act softened your shoulders, slowed your heartbeat, and changed the way you spoke to those around you? That is the quiet power of tending the soil of the mind. The soil itself does not choose. It does not decide whether to nourish a rose or a thorn. It gives itself equally to whatever is planted. Our minds, too, are ready to grow whatever we allow. This is why mindfulness matters. Not because we can stop every thought from appearing that is impossible, but because we can notice where our water is flowing. Awareness is the gardener's hand, deciding what will grow stronger and what will be left to wither. Without awareness, we may spend years feeding the very thoughts that make us suffer. With awareness, we can pause, breathe, and choose again. Of course, not every seed in our inner garden was planted by us. Some have been passed down through generations. Perhaps a seed of fear was sown by the struggles of your parents or grandparents. Perhaps a seed of self-doubt was given to you in childhood, disguised as a careless word, a harsh criticism, or a moment when love felt withheld. These inherited seeds often sprout without our permission, weaving themselves into our habits and shaping the way we see ourselves. It may feel unfair that we carry them, and perhaps it is. Yet there is also great freedom in realizing that even if we did not choose the seed, we can choose whether to water it. We can choose whether to let fear grow wild, or to gently turn our attention toward compassion, gratitude, or patience. The choice is not always easy. Sometimes the weeds seem more familiar than the flowers. Sometimes anger feels safer than forgiveness, or worry feels more natural than peace. But slowly, with patience, we can train our attention. We can notice when we are watering weeds and remind ourselves that there is another way. Imagine standing in a garden with a watering can. You see a patch of thorns on one side and a row of fragile blossoms on the other. Where will you pour the water? Each moment of awareness is that choice. Each breath is a chance to redirect our care. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, imagine walking slowly through the garden of your own mind. Do not rush. Look around with gentle curiosity. You may notice weeds of anxiety, old anger taking up space, or blossoms of kindness quietly blooming unnoticed. Do not judge what you see. A gardener does not scold the soil for what has grown. They simply observe and decide where to place their care. So walk gently, breathe deeply, and when you are ready, place your hand over your heart. With each inhale, imagine bringing water to a single seed of peace. With each exhale, imagine releasing your attention from a weed that no longer serves you. You do not need to clear the entire field tonight. Gardens are not transformed in one day. Healing, too, is a slow and patient art. Let your breath be enough for now. Let the simple act of noticing be your practice. The soil of your mind is listening, always ready to grow whatever you tend. And by turning your awareness inward, by breathing softly into the quiet, you have already begun. So, as you drift towards sleep, remember this: you are the gardener, your mind is the soil, and every thought is a seed. What you water will grow. Rest gently, knowing that tomorrow you can choose again. You can plant kindness, patience, and peace. You can let go of the vines that choke your joy. And tonight, in the silence of your breath, you have already started the work of tending your garden. Seeds of fear, seeds of compassion. There is a quiet truth that we often forget. The seeds we water most are the ones that shape the world we live in. Within the fertile soil of the mind, countless seeds lie dormant, waiting for the warmth of attention to awaken them. Some are seeds of fear, planted long ago, perhaps by moments of pain or uncertainty. Others are seeds of compassion, given to us by kindness, love, and the natural tenderness that arises when we see another being suffer. Each seed holds potential, but only those we nourish will grow strong enough to guide the direction of our lives. Fear is a seed that grows quickly. You may notice how easily it spreads, how one anxious thought multiplies into dozens, how it wraps around the heart and makes everything feel heavy. Fear thrives on repetition. It grows each time we replay worst-case scenarios, each time we convince ourselves that we are not enough, each time we forget that change is part of life. Left unchecked, fear sprouts thorns that tangle around our choices, holding us back from possibilities that might have brought joy or growth. Fear tells us to stay small, to stay hidden, to resist the natural unfolding of life. And though it sometimes protects us from harm, too often it cages us away from the fullness of living. Compassion, on the other hand, may seem delicate at first. It is a seed that often needs more conscious care. Fear is loud and demanding, while compassion is quiet, like a gentle stream flowing beneath the noise. But do not mistake its softness for weakness. Compassion is among the strongest forces in the human heart. It grows each time we pause before judging, each time we listen with patience, each time we extend kindness to ourselves as well as to others. Where fear constricts, compassion expands. It loosens the tightness in the chest, softens the voice within that says we are unworthy, and opens the space for peace to blossom. When you think of fear and compassion as seeds, you begin to see how often life invites you to choose which to water. Imagine sitting across from someone who has hurt you. The seed of fear may whisper, "Protect yourself, close your heart, do not let them in again." And perhaps that seed is right in some moments, for boundaries are also a form of wisdom. But alongside it, the seed of compassion may whisper too, "This person is also suffering. Their harshness is a reflection of their pain. Can I see their humanity without excusing their actions?" In this moment, both seeds lie before you, waiting for your water. Which one you choose will determine not only how you relate to them, but how you relate to yourself. It is the same within. Perhaps you make a mistake, something small, perhaps something you regret deeply. The seed of fear may spring up at once, saying, "You are a failure, you will never change, you should be ashamed." And if you water this seed, the roots of self-criticism grow deeper. But nearby, the seed of compassion waits patiently. It says, "You are human, you are learning, you can begin again." If you choose to water this seed, the garden of your mind softens. Instead of thorns, blossoms of patience and growth appear. The mistake becomes not a prison but a teacher. Fear is fast, compassion is steady. Fear burns hot, compassion warms gently. Fear narrows the path, compassion widens it. And while fear will always arise, it is part of being human. We do not have to keep feeding it. We do not have to let it consume the field. The miracle is that each breath offers a chance to redirect the water. Each breath can remind us, I can choose which seed I nourish now. This choice is not about pretending fear does not exist. A gardener does not deny the presence of weeds. They simply decide not to give them too much of their water. In the same way, we do not need to fight fear. We need only to acknowledge it, smile at it gently, and choose to also water compassion. By doing so, fear loses its grip. It may still live in the soil, but it no longer dominates the field. Tonight, as you lie in bed, notice what has been watered most in your mind today. Was it fear, repeating stories of doubt and worry, or was it compassion, offering gentleness to yourself and others? Do not judge the answer, simply notice. Then breathe slowly, and with each inhale, imagine watering the seed of compassion. Feel it sprout softly in your chest, roots reaching into the soil of your being. With each exhale, let go of the extra water that fear no longer needs. Over time, this practice changes the entire garden. The blossoms of compassion begin to fill the space where fear once thrived, and the fragrance of peace begins to drift through your days. The garden of the mind is never fixed. It is always in motion, always shifting with the seasons of life. Fear will arise again, and compassion will too. What matters is not the presence of these seeds, but the choice you make in each moment. Remember, you are the gardener. You decide which seeds are fed, which are allowed to grow strong, and which are left to rest quietly in the soil. Each day, each breath, you are shaping the landscape of your life. And the more you choose compassion, the more your garden will bloom with peace. The student and the cup of tea. There is an old Zen story told again and again in monasteries, tea houses, and quiet corners of the world where seekers gather to understand the mysteries of the mind. It is simple in its telling, but like many Zen stories, its meaning runs deep, like water that looks shallow on the surface, but hides an endless depth beneath. One evening, a young student, restless and burdened by the chaos of his thoughts, went to visit his master. He carried with him a heart full of questions, confusion about his life, and a desperate longing for clarity. When he arrived, he bowed quickly and asked, "Master, why does my life feel so full of noise and disorder? Why is my mind always racing like wild horses that I cannot control?" The master did not answer right away. Instead, he reached for a pot of tea and poured it into a cup, slowly and quietly, as if the student had not spoken at all. The student, frustrated by the silence, shifted on his seat, waiting for some wise words to fall into the air, but the master only continued to pour. Soon the tea rose to the brim of the cup, then spilled over, dripping onto the table, and then onto the floor. Shocked, the student cried out, "Master, stop! The cup is overflowing. It cannot hold any more." At that, the master looked up, his eyes gentle, and said softly, "And so it is with your mind. You are overflowing. How can wisdom enter when you are already so full of noise, of judgments, of fears you keep feeding every day? Until you stop pouring more into it, you cannot taste the tea of peace." The student sat in silence, humbled. In that single moment, he understood that his suffering did not come from life itself, but from the way he had been filling his mind, pouring endlessly without pausing, without emptying, without noticing which seeds he had been watering. The tea was a mirror for his thoughts, spilling over, uncontained, restless. And in that simple act of pouring, the master had answered all his questions. This story, though short, lingers like the fragrance of tea itself. It reminds us that our minds, too, become overcrowded when we keep feeding every thought that passes through. Imagine your own mind as that cup. Each day, you pour into it anxieties about tomorrow, regrets about yesterday, voices of doubt that whisper you are not enough, judgments about yourself and others, endless fragments of news, noise, and distraction. How heavy it becomes, how easily it spills over into tension in the body, impatience in the heart, sleepless nights where thoughts refuse to rest. And yet, just as the student discovered, the act of emptying is as important as the act of filling. If we never pause, if we never stop pouring, the cup will always overflow, and the sweetness of life will be lost in the flood. To stop pouring is not to stop living or thinking, it is simply to notice. To put the teapot down for a moment and see what is already in the cup. The Buddha taught that thoughts are like wild horses. Left untrained, they run in every direction, dragging us behind them. But if we do not feed them, if we do not keep giving them energy, they begin to quiet. It is not our task to control every horse, just as it is not our task to control every thought. Our task is to decide which ones we will feed, which ones we will let graze freely in our field, and which ones we will let wander away into the horizon. The overflowing cup is a mirror for modern life. We live in an age of constant pouring information at every moment, voices competing for our attention, fears amplified by repetition. We keep filling, as if more will bring peace. But more does not bring peace. More without awareness only brings overflow, and so the wisdom of the Master remains timeless. Stop feeding what makes you suffer. Notice the noise, put the teapot down, empty the cup enough so that when peace comes, you will have space to taste it. You might ask, how do we stop pouring? The answer is simpler than we think. We begin with awareness. When you notice your mind racing with stories that do not serve you, pause. When you find yourself rehearsing the same fear for the 100th time, pause. When you feel your chest tighten with judgments, pause. In that pause, you are no longer adding tea to the cup. You are no longer feeding the wild horses. You are creating space for stillness to enter. One breath taken with awareness is enough to begin. One breath that says, I see you, thought. I see you, fear. I will not pour into you tonight. That is how we empty the cup without force. That is how we taste the tea of peace. The student in the story did not need a long lecture. He needed a mirror, and so do we. Life often gives us mirrors in the form of exhaustion, stress, or the realization that no matter how much we keep adding, something still feels missing. These are not failures. They are invitations to stop pouring, to look down at the cup in our hands and ask, what am I feeding? What am I making stronger with my attention? Tonight, as you lie quietly, imagine holding a cup in your hands. See it filled with the thoughts of your day. Some are nourishing, some are heavy, some spill over without your awareness. And now imagine gently setting the teapot down. No more pouring for now. Let the surface of the tea settle, the ripples soften, until the reflection becomes clear again. This is your mind when it is not overflowing. This is the space where wisdom can enter, where compassion can blossom, where peace can be tasted fully. So rest, dear one, with this simple reminder. Your mind does not need to overflow. You do not need to feed every thought that arrives. You can pause. You can breathe. You can taste the quiet sweetness of peace. Like the student, you can learn that emptiness is not a loss, but a gift, the space where true understanding can finally enter. Choosing Which seeds to water? There is a gentle power hidden in every moment of your life, the power to choose. You may not always be able to control what thoughts appear in your mind, just as a gardener cannot stop the wind from scattering seeds across the field. But you can decide which seeds you will water, which you will allow to grow strong, and which you will leave untouched to wither back into the soil. This is the quiet art of mindful living, the recognition that your attention is the sunlight, the rain, the nourishment that brings certain thoughts to life. What you feed grows, and what you starve fades. The question is not whether seeds will fall, for they always will, but which ones you will nurture with the garden of your awareness. Imagine for a moment that two seeds rest side by side in the soil of your mind. One is the seed of anger. It sprouts quickly when someone says something harsh, when life does not go the way you expected, when the ache of disappointment presses on your heart. The other is the seed of patience, small and quiet, waiting calmly for your care. In the heat of the moment, it is easy to water the seed of anger. One sharp thought leads to another, and soon you find yourself engulfed in flames of resentment. But if you pause, even for a breath, and turn your attention instead to patience, you may notice that anger does not need to be fed. It can be left alone, allowed to dry out like a weed left without water. Meanwhile, patience, once watered, begins to grow roots that reach deep into the earth of your being, holding you steady when storms arise. The same is true of joy and sorrow, of compassion and fear, of gratitude and envy. Each lives as a possibility within you, and your daily choices determine which ones become strong enough to shape your life. Have you ever noticed how repeating a worry makes it grow larger, while repeating gratitude makes it glow brighter? This is the simple law of the inner garden. What you practice becomes natural. The thoughts you return to again and again carve pathways in the mind, like trails walked so often that they become easy to follow. This is why fear seems to come without effort. It has been rehearsed for so long. But with the same persistence, compassion can also become effortless, if only we choose to water it again and again. Choosing which seeds to water does not mean forcing yourself to only think positive thoughts. A wise gardener knows that weeds will always appear, and that soil needs balance. The art is not to deny what exists, but to decide what deserves your nourishment. If sadness arises, you can sit with it without giving it all your water. If envy appears, you can acknowledge it without feeding it further. This is not suppression, it is gentle discernment. You are not pushing emotions away, you are choosing not to make them the centerpiece of your field. In this way, the weeds remain, but do not overtake the blossoms. Consider how this looks in daily life. You wake up in the morning, and the seed of worry is already there, whispering about what might go wrong. You have two choices. You can pour your attention into it, letting it spread across the whole day, or you can pause, take a breath, and water the seed of gratitude instead. Perhaps you whisper, "I am thankful for this breath. I am thankful for this bed. I am thankful for the chance to begin again." At first, gratitude may feel small compared to the loudness of worry, but each time you return to it, each time you give it your care, it grows stronger. And over time, you may find that worry no longer dominates your mornings. Gratitude will. Or perhaps you are in conversation with someone who disagrees with you. The seed of defensiveness begins to stir, ready to grow into argument. But nearby, the seed of curiosity waits, quiet but alive. If you water defensiveness, the conversation may turn into conflict. But if you water curiosity instead, the exchange may open into understanding. This is the power of choice, not control over others, but freedom within yourself. Even the way you speak to yourself reflects which seeds you water. When you make a mistake, do you water shame, repeating over and over that you are not enough? Or do you water self-compassion, reminding yourself that being human means being imperfect, and that every misstep is an invitation to learn? Both seeds are present, but only one will shape the quality of your heart. Which one you choose again and again becomes your habit of being. It may sound like a small thing, this act of choosing, but over a lifetime, it becomes everything. Just as a single drop of water falling on stone will eventually leave its mark, the drops of attention you give your thoughts carve the shape of your life. A person who waters fear daily will live in a world that feels threatening. A person who waters compassion daily will live in a world that feels kind. The outer world may be the same, but the inner world transforms everything. Tonight, as you rest, you may want to reflect on which seeds you have watered most today. Close your eyes, breathe softly, and ask yourself, what thoughts did I return to again and again? Did they make me heavier or lighter? Did they close my heart or open it? There is no need to judge your answer. Simply notice. Awareness itself is the first step in reclaiming your role as gardener, and with that awareness, you can decide differently tomorrow. The miracle is that it is never too late. Even if fear has been watered for years, even if weeds seem to cover the field, one breath of attention to compassion can begin to change the soil. One act of kindness can plant new seeds that, with care, will blossom into forests of peace. The garden does not demand perfection. It asks only that you notice, that you care, that you choose again and again which seeds to water. So rest tonight knowing this: you are not helpless before your thoughts. You are not at the mercy of whatever grows. You hold the watering can, and every breath is a chance to choose. Water gently, choose wisely. And in time, the seeds of compassion will rise tall, shading out the weeds of fear, filling your life with blossoms of peace. Beginning with one breath. Every great journey, no matter how long or winding, always begins with a single step. And in the inner garden of the mind, that step is as simple as one gentle breath. When we think about tending to our thoughts, about transforming years of worry or fear into peace, it can feel overwhelming. We imagine that we must clear the entire field in one day, uprooting every weed and planting endless rows of blossoms. But this is not the way of nature, and it is not the way of the heart. Change begins quietly, softly, in the smallest of ways. And the smallest way, the doorway into peace, is the breath. Right now, wherever you are, your breath is flowing. Without your effort, it has been here since the moment of your birth, rising and falling, like the tide of the ocean, like the wind moving through trees. It is steady, patient, and forgiving. You may have ignored it all day, rushing through tasks, worrying about tomorrow, replaying yesterday, and yet your breath never abandoned you. It has been waiting, faithful and constant, ready to bring you home whenever you choose to notice it again. The Buddha often taught that awareness of breath is the anchor of the mind. Why? because the breath always happens in the present moment. You cannot breathe yesterday's air or tomorrow's. You can only breathe this breath, here and now. And so, when you turn your attention to it, you return immediately to the present, the only place where peace lives, the only place where choice is possible, the only place where you can begin again. Think of the breath as a watering can. With each inhale, you draw in awareness, clarity, and life. With each exhale, you release tension, fear, and distraction. One breath is enough to shift the flow of water away from the weeds and toward the blossoms. One breath is enough to remind you that you are the gardener, that you have the power to choose again. And though it may feel small, the garden changes drop by drop, moment by moment, breath by breath. Perhaps tonight, as you prepare for sleep, your mind feels crowded. Thoughts tumble over one another like leaves in the wind. Maybe your body is tense, your shoulders heavy, your heart restless. In this moment, do not try to fix everything. Do not demand the mind to be silent or the heart to be calm. Instead, place one hand gently on your chest or your belly, close your eyes, and feel the rise of your breath beneath your palm. Inhale slowly, noticing the coolness of the air as it enters. Exhale gently, noticing the warmth as it leaves. That is all. Nothing more is required. In this simple act, you are already tending to your garden. You are already choosing peace. One breath can become two, two can become three. And as you continue, you may notice the mind beginning to settle, the soil softening, the noise fading just enough for stillness to appear. This is the quiet miracle of beginning with the breath. It does not erase your problems. It does not demand that you be perfect. It simply reminds you that you are here, that you are alive, that you have the capacity to care for yourself in this moment. Sometimes we think healing must be grand, dramatic, or final. But in truth, healing often begins in these small pauses, in the moments when we stop pouring tea into an overflowing cup, when we stop watering fear and turn instead toward compassion. The breath is the bridge. It connects body and mind, soil and seed, gardener and garden. It is the gentle thread that ties us back to life. And what if, you wonder, I forget to breathe with awareness? What if I get lost again in fear or distraction? The beauty of the breath is that it does not keep score. Each inhale is a beginning. Each exhale is a release. You can return 1,000 times a day, and each time the breath will welcome you back as if you had never left. There is no failure in this practice. There is only returning, again and again, until returning itself becomes your home. So tonight, let your practice be simple. Do not search for enlightenment in distant mountains or perfect silence. Do not measure yourself against the blossoms of another's garden. Simply rest with one breath. Feel it, honor it, allow it to bring you here. As you inhale, imagine watering a seed of peace. As you exhale, imagine releasing a weed of worry. With each cycle, your garden shifts, even if only by a fraction. And over time, these fractions gather, just as drops of rain gather into rivers, just as rivers carve valleys, just as valleys shape the land. Your life, too, is shaped in this way, softly, gradually, one breath at a time. You do not need to see the whole garden bloom tonight. You need only to trust that each breath is planting something real, something lasting, something that will one day blossom into beauty. And when sleep comes, let the breath carry you gently into it, like a boat carried down a quiet river. Know that as you rest, the seeds you have watered today will continue their silent work in the soil of your mind. And when morning comes, you will wake again with the same choice, the same watering can, the same breath waiting to guide you home. So let this be your comfort. The path to peace does not begin with 1,000 steps. It begins with one breath, always one breath. And that breath is here, now, ready for you. The mirror of the mind. There is a simple but profound idea at the heart of Buddhist psychology. The mind is not merely an observer of the world, but a mirror that reflects it, reshapes it, and colors every experience we have. Unlike a passive recorder, the mind takes in what it sees and returns it transformed, so that the quality of our thoughts becomes the quality of our days. If the mirror is clouded, the world looks stormy. If the mirror is clear, the world appears radiant, even in its imperfections. Imagine waking each morning and holding up this mirror to the sky. On days when your mind is restless, the reflection you see is full of dark clouds. On days when your heart is heavy with self-criticism, the mirror returns an image of disappointment and struggle. But on the days when your thoughts are grounded in kindness, patience, and gratitude, the mirror reveals beauty everywhere, even in the cracked sidewalks, even in fleeting moments that others might overlook. The mind does not lie. It simply shows us again and again the quality of what we allow it to hold. The Buddha once said, "With our thoughts, we make the world." He did not mean this as poetry, but as literal truth. What we call reality is shaped in large part by the habits of perception we have rehearsed. When we are anxious, the world feels sharper, colder, full of edges. When we are peaceful, the same world feels soft, inviting, more forgiving. Nothing outside has changed. The traffic is still noisy, the dishes still wait in the sink, the future is still uncertain. And yet everything is different because the mirror has been polished by our attention. You may have seen this for yourself. Think of a day when you felt tired, burdened, critical of your own reflection in the mirror. Did the world not seem heavier as well? Did people appear impatient? Did tasks feel harder than usual? Now recall a day when you were rested, when something small lifted your spirit, a kind word, the way light streamed through a window, the laughter of a stranger nearby. On that day, the very same world shimmered with possibility. Nothing outside you had changed, but the inner mirror altered everything you could see. This is why mental training, which in Buddhism is called bhavan, is not a luxury for monks or philosophers. It is a necessity for anyone who wishes to suffer less and live with clarity. The mind untrained will reflect back every shadow it is shown, sometimes distorting them until they seem larger than life. But a mind gently polished by mindfulness, compassion, and inquiry becomes like a still pond, reflecting the moon without distortion. There is an old Zen parable that illustrates this beautifully. A traveler was crossing a river at dusk when he noticed another boat drifting quickly toward him. Alarmed, he shouted warnings and tried to paddle out of its way. The boat, however, kept coming, ignoring his cries, until it struck his own with a loud crash. Anger flared in the traveler's chest, ready to unleash blame on whoever had been so careless. But when he looked closely, he saw that the boat was empty. There had never been anyone steering it. The collision it turned out, was not personal at all. In that moment, the traveler understood something profound. So many of our reactions, our anger, our hurt, our blame, come not from what actually happened, but from the story we told ourselves about it. We fill in intention where there is only circumstance. We imagine insult where there was only accident. We take things personally that were never about us. In this way, the mirror of the mind does not just reflect, it invents, it exaggerates, it transforms neutral events into wounds we then carry heavily. But here lies the grace. Just as the mirror can distort, it can also be cleaned. Just as it can be covered with dust, it can be polished until it reflects truth again. The practices of mindfulness, right effort, and loving kindness are not escapes from life, but cloths with which we wipe the glass of the mind. With each breath of awareness, we rub away a little dust. With each act of compassion, we smooth the surface. Over time, we begin to see the world more clearly, and perhaps even more importantly, we see ourselves with gentleness instead of harshness. So tonight, as you rest in the stillness of your room, imagine holding up this mirror of the mind. Notice what it reflects from your day. Did it show storms or moments of light? Did it exaggerate old fears or reveal hidden beauty? This is not about judgment, not about scolding yourself for cloudy reflections. It is simply about noticing what has been planted, what has been shown, and remembering that with each breath, you can begin the work of polishing again. A conscious mind is a free mind, and with every choice to see clearly, you reclaim a little more freedom. Rest gently now, knowing that tomorrow the mirror can shine more brightly, and it begins not with grand effort, but with the simplest act, noticing what is there, breathing into it, and choosing once more. Have you ever noticed how quickly the quality of your thoughts can change the quality of your day? It is as if a cloud drifts across the mind, dimming the light, and suddenly the whole world looks duller. The external world has not shifted. Your house is the same, the sky is the same, the people around you are the same, yet because of one thought, everything feels altered. This is the way of the mind. It does not only record life, it colors it, sometimes with clarity and sometimes with distortion. When the mind is clouded, even small challenges appear enormous. A minor inconvenience becomes an obstacle. A passing comment feels like criticism. The ordinary flow of life seems heavier, more difficult to carry. Have you experienced this, where the simplest task, like answering an email or washing a dish, feels like climbing a hill because your thoughts are wrapped in worry or doubt? This is what happens when the mirror is smudged. It reflects not the world as it is, but the weight of our own confusion. And yet, the opposite is also true. When the mind is clear, even difficulties feel lighter. A challenge becomes an opportunity. A mistake becomes a teacher. A long day becomes simply a day, nothing more, nothing less. Think back to a time when you were calm, when peace rested softly in your chest. Did you not notice how generous the world felt? Even the traffic seemed less hostile. Even the silence felt like a friend. Nothing outside had changed, but the clarity of the mind changed everything. This is why Buddhist teachings often compare the mind to the sky. Clouds may cover it, storms may roar across it, but the sky itself is never harmed. It remains vast and unbroken. Thoughts are like clouds, sometimes heavy and dark, sometimes light and playful, sometimes covering everything, sometimes drifting apart to reveal the blue expanse beneath. When we forget this, we believe that the clouds are the sky. We mistake passing moods for permanent reality. But when we remember, we realize that clarity is always available, waiting patiently beneath the storm. There was once a man who carried a polished bowl with him everywhere he went. Whenever he was troubled, he would look into it. If his reflection was distorted by dirt or dust, he would clean the surface, reminding himself that the problem was not in his face, but in the mirror. In the same way, when your thoughts are heavy, it is not that the world has changed, but that the mirror needs polishing. A single act of awareness, a breath, a moment of compassion, a pause before reacting wipes away a little of the dust, and the reflection becomes clearer. It is easy to believe that happiness lies outside of us, in a perfect situation, a different job, a kinder world. But clarity reveals that happiness arises from within, from the way the mind meets the world. When the mirror is clean, even ordinary moments glow. The taste of tea becomes profound. The warmth of sunlight feels like a blessing. The sound of a loved one's laughter fills the whole room with beauty. These things were always there, but only a polished mind could reflect them fully. So how do we polish the mirror? Not with force, not with judgment, but with gentle attention. Each time you notice yourself lost in cloudy thoughts, simply acknowledge it. Ah, the clouds are here. Do not fight them. Do not chase them. Do not scold yourself for being human. Just notice, and then breathe. The act of noticing is already the act of cleaning. The act of returning to your breath is already the act of remembering the clear sky beneath. Tonight, as you lie in bed, you might imagine the mirror of your mind resting in your hands. See the clouds that may have gathered today, moments of irritation, of self-doubt, of worry, and with each slow breath, imagine wiping the surface clean. Let the clouds drift as they will, and watch as the clarity slowly returns. You may not clear the sky completely, and that is fine. Even a glimpse of blue is enough to remind you of what has always been there. Remember this: clarity is not something to be earned or created. It is your natural state, always waiting beneath the clouds. All you need to do is return, gently, patiently, one breath at a time. And as you drift into sleep, let this be your comfort. No storm is permanent, no cloud lasts forever. The mirror of the mind can always shine again. The mind is not only a mirror, it is also a storyteller. When we look into its reflection, we do not always see the world as it truly is. We often see the world as we believe it to be. The mind fills in details, creates motives, and invents meanings, sometimes without our awareness. What we experience is not only the event itself, but the story we tell about it. And often, it is the story, not the event, that causes us the deepest suffering. There is an old Zen story about a man crossing a river in the fading light of day. As he paddled across, he noticed another boat drifting quickly toward him. At first, he thought little of it, but as the boat came closer, he realized it was heading directly for him. Alarm surged through his chest. He shouted warnings, trying to steer out of the way, but the boat continued forward, silent and unyielding. Finally, with a sharp crash, the two boats collided. The man erupted with anger, ready to curse the fool who had been so careless. But when he looked more closely, He saw that the boat was empty. There was no one inside. The boat had simply drifted with the current. In that instant, his anger dissolved. There had been no insult, no attack, no careless person to blame. The entire story had been created in his mind. He had believed someone was against him, when in truth, there was only an empty boat. How many of the conflicts in our own lives are like this? How often do we create pain not from what happened, but from the meaning we give it? Think of the last time you felt hurt by someone's words. Perhaps they did not greet you as warmly as you expected, or perhaps they forgot something important. The seed of a story appeared. They do not care. They are angry with me. I am not important to them. And once watered, that story grew quickly, wrapping itself around your heart. But if you look more closely, you may realize the truth was much simpler. Perhaps they were tired. Perhaps their mind was elsewhere. Perhaps their silence was an empty boat, drifting with currents you could not see. The mirror of the mind reflects not just what is there, but what we project upon it. A cloud of self-doubt, and suddenly every neutral glance feels like judgment. A seed of fear, and suddenly every sound at night feels like danger. We mistake our reflections for reality, forgetting that the stories we tell are often incomplete. And yet, when we pause, when we polish the mirror, when we breathe into awareness, we see through the story and return to the truth. This is not to say that harm never happens, that every slight is an empty boat. People can be unkind, and suffering is real. But the teaching is this: much of our pain comes not from what was done, but from the extra weight we add. We layer intention onto accident. We attach permanence to passing moods. We let the mind spin stories that harden into suffering. When we see this clearly, we can step back and ask, what if this is just an empty boat? What if I do not need to carry this story any longer? The practice of mindfulness is like lifting a veil. It does not erase what has happened, but reveals the difference between the event and the story we have wrapped around it. In this space of awareness, we find freedom. We no longer have to believe every thought the mind creates. We can meet life as it is, without the burden of extra narratives. Tonight, as you close your eyes, you might recall a moment from today when you felt hurt or frustrated. Let it rise gently in your mind, and then ask, what was the story I told myself about this moment? Was it true, or was it an empty boat? Breathe into the question without needing an answer. Simply hold it, as if holding the mirror of the mind up to the light. Notice how even the act of questioning loosens the grip of the story. Notice how the heart feels lighter when you remember that not every boat has a driver, not every reflection is permanent, not every thought must be believed. The mirror can distort, but it can also reveal clarity. And with each breath of awareness, with each choice to look more deeply, we polish the surface of our mind until we can see again not the stories we fear, but the truth that sets us free. There is a quiet power hidden in a single question. Is this really true? So often, we move through life believing the first reflection we see in the mirror of the mind. A thought arises, I am not good enough. They do not care about me. The future is hopeless. And without hesitation we accept it as fact. Yet thoughts are not always truth. They are clouds drifting across the sky of awareness, stories painted across the surface of a mirror that is much deeper, much clearer than they suggest. If we never question them, they define our reality. But the moment we pause and ask, "Is this true?" something shifts. The mirror clears, and we glimpse what lies beneath. Consider how often suffering begins with an unquestioned thought. A friend does not return your call. Instantly the mind whispers, "They are ignoring me. I must have done something wrong." That thought multiplies quickly, coloring your heart with sadness or resentment. But if you stop and ask, "Is this really true?" you may realize the truth is unknown. Perhaps they were busy. Perhaps their phone died. Perhaps they were caught in their own storm of thoughts. By questioning the first reflection, you open the door to compassion for yourself and for them. The practice of inquiry is not about denying reality. If someone speaks harshly, it hurts. If you lose something precious, it is painful. These are real experiences. But the suffering deepens when the mind adds stories. "This always happens to me. I will never be happy again. Life is against me." These are not truths. They are conclusions born of pain. To ask, "Is it really so?" is to step back from the story and return to the present, where healing becomes possible. The Buddha taught that suffering is like an arrow. The first arrow is the pain of the event itself, loss, disappointment, illness, or conflict. But the second arrow is the story the mind creates around it. "Why me? This should not have happened. My life is ruined." The first arrow is unavoidable. It is part of being human. But the second arrow is optional. And often it is the second arrow that causes the deeper wound. When we ask, "Is this really true?" we put down the second arrow. We choose not to wound ourselves again. Imagine holding a mirror streaked with dust. At first glance you believe the dust is part of your face. You frown at the reflection, convinced that something is wrong with you. But then you pause, wipe the glass, and see clearly. The dust was never yours. In the same way, thoughts of unworthiness, fear, or hopelessness may appear real at first, but when you question them, you discover they were only dust on the mirror. Beneath them, your true nature remains clear, steady, whole. This questioning is not harsh interrogation, it is gentle curiosity. Instead of saying, "This thought is bad, I must get rid of it," you simply ask, "Is it true? Is it helpful? Does it serve my well-being?" If the answer is no, you let the thought drift away like a cloud. If the answer is yes, you let it stay, allowing it to nourish you like rain falling on the earth. In this way, questioning becomes a form of care, a way of polishing the mirror until only what is real and useful remains. Perhaps tonight, as you lie in the quiet of your room, you notice a thought repeating in your mind. Maybe it is about tomorrow, or about something from the past. Instead of following it endlessly, pause. Whisper softly to yourself, "Is this really true?" Then breathe. You may find that the thought loses its weight, that it was only a shadow passing across the surface. Or you may find that the truth beneath it is gentler than you imagined. Over time, this practice becomes a refuge. No matter how stormy the mind becomes, you remember that not every cloud defines the sky. You remember that the mirror can always be polished. And with each question, with each breath, you learn to trust not every thought, but the awareness that holds them all. That awareness is vast, unshaken, like the sky itself, and it is always yours. So rest tonight with this gentle reminder: you are not every thought you think. You are the space in which thoughts come and go. And when doubt or fear arises, you need not believe it blindly. You can pause, breathe, and ask with kindness, is this really true? In that pause, the mirror clears and freedom shines through. The mirror of the mind is not something outside of you, fragile and breakable. It is within you, steady and luminous, always reflecting what you allow it to hold. With every thought you tend, with every story you believe, you polish or cloud its surface. And while life will always scatter dust upon it, moments of worry, sorrow, or anger, you always have the power to return, to wipe it clean, to remember the clarity beneath. This is one of the quiet treasures of the Buddhist path. We are never as trapped as we think we are. The storms may roar across the surface, but the sky beneath remains untouched. Think of the times in your life when you felt broken, when the weight of your reflections convinced you that peace was impossible. Maybe it was a season of grief, maybe a time of loneliness, maybe days of endless anxiety, and yet somehow you made it through. Somehow the storm passed. Looking back now, can you see that the storm was never permanent, that the mirror was never truly shattered? It was only hidden, waiting for the light of awareness to shine upon it again. Clarity does not mean perfection. To live with a polished mind does not mean you will never feel sadness, fear, or doubt. These are part of being human, but with a clear mirror, you see them for what they are. Passing visitors, not permanent residents. You greet them, you acknowledge them, but you do not confuse them with the truth of who you are. You are not the cloud, you are the sky. You are not the dust, you are the mirror. Each time you return to your breath, each time you pause to ask, is this really true? Each time you choose compassion over judgment, you polish the glass a little more. The work is gradual, like a slow sunrise illuminating the world inch by inch. You may not notice the change right away, but over time, the reflection becomes clearer. Life feels lighter, not because the world has shifted, but because your vision has. This is why presence is so healing. When you are present, you are not lost in yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's fears. You are here, in the only moment that truly exists. And in this moment, the mirror shines. Presence does not demand that your life be perfect. It simply invites you to see it as it is. The steam rising from a cup of tea, the sound of your breath as you lie in bed, the feeling of the sheets against your skin, these are small things, but when reflected through a clear mind, they become extraordinary. They remind you that peace is not something distant. It is already here, waiting to be noticed. There is an old saying, the moon does not fight the clouds. It simply shines, and eventually the clouds drift away. In the same way, you do not need to fight every thought, every shadow on the mirror. You need only to return to the light of awareness. Shine gently, breathe patiently, and trust that what is unclear now will one day reveal itself. No storm is forever. No mirror stays dusty when cared for. So tonight, as you prepare to rest, imagine setting the mirror of your mind in front of you. Look into it with kindness, not judgment. See the reflections that have appeared today, the moments of joy, the moments of struggle, the thoughts that clung to you, the ones that drifted by. And then, with your breath as your cloth, gently polish the surface. Inhale, noticing clarity returning. Exhale, releasing what no longer serves you. Feel the mirror grow lighter, brighter, more spacious. As you drift toward sleep, let this be your comfort. Clarity is not something far away. It is not reserved for sages or monks. It is here, within you, as close as your next breath. The mirror of your mind is already whole, already luminous, already capable of reflecting peace. You do not need to earn it. You need only to remember it. And in remembering, you begin to live not in shadows, but in light. Rest now, dear one. Trust the clarity that is already yours. And know that when morning comes, the mirror will be waiting, ready to reflect the beauty of another day. Every moment of your life, doors are opening and closing inside you. They are not made of wood or iron, but of attention and awareness, and they are the gates through which all of your experiences enter. The Buddhists call them the six sense doors: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and the mind itself. From the moment you wake in the morning until you fall asleep at night, these doors are receiving visitors. A sound knocks, a sight enters, a memory passes through, and with each visitor comes the possibility of peace or disturbance. Most of the time, these gates stand unguarded. Life rushes in without discernment. A harsh word slips through and lingers like an unwelcome guest. A frightening image from the news finds its way inside and grows into anxiety. Even old voices, long gone, wander back through the door of memory, echoing criticisms from the past. When the gate is unguarded, anything may enter, and soon the house of the mind feels crowded, noisy, and restless. But you are not powerless in this. Within you lives a gatekeeper, a quiet awareness that can choose what to welcome and what to release. This gatekeeper is not harsh, not judgmental, not standing with weapons at the door. It is gentle, watchful, and wise. Its task is not to banish all unpleasant experiences, but to discern which ones deserve to stay, which ones to bow to and let pass, and which ones to refuse. Like a host deciding who sits at the table, the gatekeeper ensures that your inner home remains a place of balance and care. Think of a time when you allowed every visitor into your mind without pause. Perhaps you scrolled through endless headlines late at night, each one planting seeds of worry. Perhaps you replayed old arguments, letting anger slip through the door again and again. Did you notice how quickly your peace was taken, how restless your inner home became? Now think of a time when you guarded the gate with awareness. Perhaps you chose to turn off the news and listen to music that soothed you. Perhaps you noticed anger approaching and chose instead to breathe, to let it pass without inviting it in. In those moments, you were the gatekeeper, and your inner world reflected your care. The practice is not about closing the gates forever. Life will always knock, and some visitors will be uncomfortable but necessary. Grief must be welcomed when it comes. It has wisdom to offer. Fear may need to be heard before it can soften, but awareness allows you to decide how long they stay, how deeply they root themselves in your mind. Without awareness, anger barges in and takes over the house. With awareness, you can say, "I see you, anger." You may sit for a moment, but you may not move in. Tonight, as you rest, you might imagine yourself sitting at the threshold of your mind. You are the gatekeeper. Visitors will approach memories, sensations, thoughts, and you will see them arrive. Some you will welcome, some you will let pass, some you will gently refuse. You will do this not with harshness, but with kindness. for even the most difficult emotions are part of being human. And with each choice, you will feel your inner home grow quieter, safer, more at peace. The gatekeeper is already within you. It has been waiting patiently for your return, waiting for you to remember that you are not helpless before the flood of life. You can choose what you let in. You can choose how long it stays. And in this choosing, you begin to reclaim the stillness that has always been yours. When we do not guard the gates of our senses with awareness, the world seeps in like rain through an open roof. At first it may feel harmless, a few drops here and there, but slowly the water spreads, soaking the walls, weakening the foundation. In the same way, when we allow every image, every sound, every anxious thought to wander into the house of our mind without care, our peace begins to erode. What starts as a single drop of irritation can, if left unchecked, grow into a flood of anger. A brief glance at a troubling headline can spiral into hours of worry. A single harsh word overheard can echo through the mind long after the sound has faded. The Buddha taught that just as a fortress guards its gates carefully, so too should we guard the gates of the senses. Not with fear, not with rejection, but with mindful presence. For when the senses are left unguarded, craving, aversion, and confusion walk in freely. They settle into the house of the mind, rearranging the furniture, dictating how we feel and act. But when awareness sits at the threshold, these visitors can be seen clearly. We may still hear the sound, see the image, feel the emotion, but we know what it is. We know it does not need to define us. Think of the last time you heard a song that lingered in your mind all day. Even hours later, the melody hummed in the background of your thoughts. Or perhaps you saw something unsettling on the news, and though the program ended, the image stayed with you, coloring your mood long into the evening. These are small examples of how impressions seep in when the gate is left open. Now imagine how much more powerful it is with emotions like anger, jealousy, or fear. When they are allowed to enter without awareness, they do not leave quickly. They seep into the walls of the mind, staining them, making everything else feel darker. But awareness changes everything. Imagine rain falling on a roof, well cared for. The drops still fall, but they run off harmlessly, leaving the house dry and safe. In the same way, when awareness guards the senses, experiences still come, but they do not soak into the mind. A harsh word may still be heard, but instead of echoing endlessly, it is recognized for what it is: just sound, just vibration, passing quickly. A troubling image may still appear, but instead of feeding fear, awareness sees it as just an image, impermanent, unable to take root without our attention. The problem is not that life brings us difficult impressions, it always will. The problem is forgetting that we are the gatekeepers. Too often we sit inside the house and let the doors swing open without care, letting in every guest, pleasant or not. But when we remember our role, when we sit again at the threshold with awareness, we can decide how these impressions are received. Some may still be invited to sit and teach us, like grief or compassion. Others may be acknowledged and gently asked to move on, like envy or resentment. This practice is not about building walls to keep life out. It is about opening and closing the gates with wisdom. If you build a wall, nothing enters, not joy, not connection, not love. But if you leave the gates unguarded, chaos reigns. The middle way, as the Buddha taught, is to remain open yet discerning, to welcome what nourishes and let pass what harms. Tonight, as you settle into the quiet, imagine the doors of your senses before you. Notice what is knocking. Perhaps it is the memory of something unfinished, or the echo of a voice, or the restless hum of worry. See yourself as the gatekeeper. Do you wish to let this in, or can you bow to it gently and let it pass on? Feel the power in that choice. Feel the stillness that comes from remembering that not everything knocking at your gate deserves entry. You are the guardian of your inner home, and the more you sit at the threshold with awareness, the more your home becomes a sanctuary, safe, quiet, and alive with the peace that comes from choosing with care. Life will always bring moments that feel like mud beneath our feet. We walk through them every day. Disappointments, unkind words, unexpected difficulties. They cling to us, heavy and uncomfortable. Yet the difference between suffering and freedom is not whether we encounter the mud, but whether we choose to sit down in it. There is a story told in Zen about two monks traveling together. On their path, they came to a muddy riverbank where a woman stood, unable to cross without soiling her fine clothes. One monk, without hesitation, lifted her onto his back, carried her across, and set her down gently on the other side. The woman thanked him and walked on. Hours later, as the monks continued their journey in silence, the other monk finally burst out, "Why did you carry that woman? We monks are not supposed to touch women." The first monk looked at him with calm eyes and said softly, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story is a mirror for our own lives. Difficult moments are inevitable. We will all step into the mud of life. But how often do we carry it long after the moment has passed? Someone speaks harshly, and days later we still replay their words, muddying our minds with resentment. We make a mistake, and months later we are still sitting in the mud of shame, unable to stand up and walk on. The gatekeeper within us is not meant to stop the mud from appearing that is impossible, but to remind us that we do not need to carry it longer than necessary. When awareness guards the gate, we can see clearly, this anger, this worry, this sadness is mud. It has entered, it is here, but it does not have to stay. We can acknowledge it, bow to it, and then choose to set it down. Without awareness, we forget this choice. We sit in the mud, turning it over in our hands, believing that to suffer longer is somehow to make sense of it. But suffering does not resolve pain, it only deepens it. The freedom comes when we stand up, shake the mud from our feet, and walk on. Think of a time when you carried something far longer than it needed to be carried. Perhaps a small slight from a friend that you replayed until it grew into a wound much larger than the original moment. Perhaps a decision you regretted, one you held on to for years, convincing yourself you could never forgive. This is the weight of sitting in the mud. The event itself is one burden, but the story, the repetition, the self-punishment, that is the greater weight. The Buddha compared it to being struck by two arrows. The first arrow is the pain itself. The second arrow is the suffering we create by holding on to it. The gatekeeper teaches us to put down the second arrow. This does not mean ignoring pain or pretending it never happened. To acknowledge the mud is necessary, but awareness allows us to see it clearly. Yes, this is here. Yes, this is heavy. And yes, I can choose to release it when it is ready to be released. In this way, the mud becomes not a prison, but a teacher. It shows us how strong our awareness can be, how much lighter we feel when we remember to let go. Tonight, as you rest, you might reflect, what mud have I been carrying? Whose words are still echoing inside me? What old mistakes have I been unwilling to set down? Breathe into these questions gently, without judgment. Then, imagine yourself placing the burden on the ground. See yourself walking forward with lighter steps. Feel how the air grows clearer, how your body relaxes when you no longer carry what was never meant to be carried forever. The gatekeeper within you does not demand perfection. It does not scold you for stepping in the mud. It simply reminds you that you have the power to stand up again, to walk on, to open the door to freedom with every step. And with each breath, you learn again the art of letting go. Every day, countless impressions knock at the gates of your senses. Some arrive softly, like the warmth of sunlight on your skin or the laughter of a loved one. Others arrive more forcefully, like harsh words, troubling news, or the sudden jolt of fear when something unexpected happens. If the gates stand wide open without care, all of these impressions march in and fill the house of the mind. Soon it becomes noisy, cluttered, restless. But if you are present as the gatekeeper, you begin to see that not everything deserves to be welcomed deeply. The Buddha often compared the senses to doors of a house. If the doors are unguarded, strangers may walk in at any time, bringing both joy and harm. But if you guard them with awareness, you can choose carefully who enters. This does not mean closing yourself off from the world, shutting every door and window. It means opening them with discernment, choosing what you allow to linger, what you allow to take root. For while you cannot stop the knock at the door, you can decide how long the visitor stays. Consider how this plays out in daily life. A cruel comment from someone may slip through the gate of hearing. If you are unmindful, it echoes endlessly inside, replaying again and again until it grows into a belief about yourself. But if you are mindful, you may pause and see it for what it is. Sound waves, nothing more, shaped by another person's pain or confusion. You acknowledge it, but you do not let it take root. The gatekeeper within you bows to it gently, then lets it pass. Or think of the gate of sight. Every day you see images, some beautiful, some troubling, some designed to stir craving or fear. Without awareness, these images sink deep into the soil of your mind, planting seeds that grow long after you have forgotten where they came from. But with awareness, you can pause and ask, does this nourish me? Does this bring peace? Or does it disturb me? If it disturbs, you do not have to keep looking. You can choose to turn your eyes towards something that uplifts, something that steadies your heart. The same is true of taste, touch, even the mind itself. What you consume shapes you, not only the food on your plate, but the impressions you allow into your heart. A body fed only on junk becomes weak. A mind fed only on fear becomes restless. But a body nourished with care grows strong, and a mind nourished with compassion grows spacious and free. This is the wisdom of the gatekeeper, to choose with gentleness what you allow inside. It is important to remember that guarding the gates is not about control in the sense of harsh restriction. It is not about shutting out the world or living in fear of being touched by life. Rather, It is about honoring your own well-being. Just as you would not invite a thief into your home, why invite unkindness to live rent-free in your heart? Just as you would not eat spoiled food, why feed your mind with thoughts that poison your peace? The gatekeeper simply reminds you that you have a choice. You do not need to accept every offering life places at your door. You can choose to welcome what nourishes and release what does not. Tonight, as you close your eyes, you might reflect on what you have allowed through your gates today. Did you welcome peace, or did you let anger linger too long? Did you invite gratitude to sit at your table, or did you feed worry instead? Do not judge the answers. Simply notice them, as a gatekeeper notices who has passed through, and then, with your breath as your guide, imagine gently opening the door to compassion, kindness, and rest. Invite these visitors to stay. Allow them to fill your inner home with light. You are the guardian of your senses. With each choice, you shape the atmosphere of your mind. And when you choose carefully, when you honor your own peace, the house within becomes a sanctuary, quiet, calm, a place where your spirit can rest deeply. Every temple, no matter how grand or humble, is swept clean at the end of the day. The monks gather in silence, their brooms moving slowly across the floor, brushing away the dust and fallen leaves, preparing the sacred space for rest. In the same way, your mind, your inner temple, also deserves to be cleansed each evening before you sleep. Throughout the day, countless impressions pass through your gates. Some uplift you, others weigh you down. Some you welcome willingly, others sneak in without notice. By the time night falls, the inner home may feel cluttered, crowded with thoughts and emotions that do not belong. This is where the gentle work of the gatekeeper continues. Before you close your eyes, pause and sweep the floors of your mind, not with force, not with judgment, but with a quiet noticing. Ask yourself, what entered today through my eyes, my ears, my heart? Did I carry the heaviness of someone else's anger? Did I allow too much noise to linger? Did I let worry settle into the corners of my mind? You do not need to fix everything you find. You need only to see it clearly, to recognize what is present, and then to decide, shall I carry this into sleep, or shall I release it now? There is a practice some Buddhists follow called reviewing the day. At night, they sit quietly and reflect on the impressions they have taken in, not to judge, but to learn. They notice the seeds they watered, the emotions they fed, the choices that brought them closer to peace or further from it. Then, with compassion, they let it all go. They remind themselves that tomorrow is another chance, another dawn for the gatekeeper to stand watch with more awareness. You might try this tonight. Close your eyes and imagine yourself holding a broom, sweeping the inner floors of your temple. With each breath, brush away the fragments of worry. With each exhale, let the dust of old anger be lifted into the air and carried out. See the floor growing clearer, see the space opening again. Then, when the temple is clean, light a small lantern in your imagination, a lantern of gratitude. Let it glow softly, illuminating the emptiness not with loneliness, but with peace. When you cleanse the inner temple in this way, you prepare not only for restful sleep, but also for dreams that are lighter, less tangled in the noise of the day. You enter the night with an uncluttered heart, open to the gentle healing that comes with rest. And when morning comes, You rise into a mind that is spacious, ready to receive the new day with clarity. Guarding the gates, then, is not a one-time task. It is a rhythm, a daily practice of choosing what to welcome, what to release, what to keep. It is remembering that your mind is sacred ground, deserving of care. Just as a gardener tends the soil, just as monks sweep their temples, you too can honor your inner home by keeping it clear and balanced. So tonight, as your breath slows and your body sinks into the softness of rest, imagine yourself standing once more at the threshold of your mind. Thank the gatekeeper within you for watching, for choosing, for caring. Trust that as you sleep, the gates will remain at peace. And when the new day arrives, you will awaken to your role again, ready to choose carefully, lovingly, what you allow to shape the sanctuary of your heart. Even when the night outside is quiet, when the room is still and the world seems at rest, many of us notice that something inside refuses to be silent. There is a hum beneath the surface, a restlessness that lingers, a constant vibration that will not let us settle. It is not the loudness of traffic or the voices of others. It is the residue of noise we have carried with us all day. The noise of the world does not end when we close the door. It follows us inward, woven into our thoughts, our bodies, our very breath. The Buddha lived in a time before airplanes, before radios, before screens that glowed late into the night. People walked barefoot through forests, rising with the sun, moving with the rhythm of nature. Silence was part of daily life, not something rare to be sought, but something as natural as air. And yet even then, he spoke of the importance of stillness, of quieting the mind amidst the noise of craving, fear, and desire. If silence was a practice in those simpler days, how much more urgent is it now, in our age of constant voices, endless messages, and screens that never sleep? The noise of the modern world is not only in our ears, it seeps through the eyes, through the mind, through the very pulse of our nervous system. Notifications flash, headlines scroll, conversations buzz in the background, and without realizing it, we absorb it all. Each impression leaves a trace, like dust gathering on the mirror of the mind. By the end of the day, the inner world feels crowded, overstimulated, exhausted, not because of what we have done, but because of what we have taken in. Perhaps you have felt this yourself. You finish the day, but your mind is still racing. You lie down, but your body feels restless, as if it has forgotten how to be still. You want silence, yet silence feels uncomfortable, even foreign, because you have grown so used to noise. This is the hidden effect of living unguarded in a world that never stops speaking. We begin to mistake the hum of restlessness for normal life, forgetting that beneath it lies a deeper, quieter rhythm. In Buddhism, silence is not emptiness, it is nourishment. Monks practice noble silence not as punishment, but as medicine. In silence, the mind rests, the heart softens, the nervous system remembers its natural pace. In silence, the dust begins to settle, and the mirror of the mind clears on its own. This is why stillness feels so healing when we finally allow it. It is not that we are adding anything, but that we are finally letting go of everything extra, everything we did not need to carry. You do not need to leave the world to find this silence. It begins wherever you are. Even now, as you breathe, you can listen beneath the hum of your thoughts. Can you hear the quiet between each inhale and exhale? Can you sense the space between the beats of your heart? That silence is always here, hidden beneath the noise, waiting patiently for your return. Tonight, as you rest, remember that the noise of the world is not stronger than the stillness within you. Beneath the chatter, beneath the endless flow of impressions, there is a silence that cannot be touched. You do not need to create it. You need only to remember it. And in remembering, you begin to reclaim the peace that has been yours all along. The strange thing about noise is that after a while we stop noticing it. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel ordinary, even necessary. Many of us have grown so accustomed to living with noise, outer and inner, that silence itself feels uncomfortable, even threatening. We turn on the television not because we want to watch, but because the quiet feels too heavy. We reach for our phones not because we truly need anything, but because the silence between moments feels unbearable. We fill the air with music, chatter, distraction, anything to avoid being left alone with ourselves. This is one of the great illusions of modern life, the belief that constant stimulation is normal, that a restless mind is simply the way things are. But if we look deeper, we see that this addiction to noise comes not from true need, but from fear. Silence holds up a mirror. When the world grows quiet, we are left with ourselves, our unprocessed feelings, our hidden grief, our unanswered questions. Noise protects us from this meeting. It drowns out the whispers of the heart. But protection quickly becomes imprisonment. For in avoiding silence, we avoid the very space where healing and clarity arise. The Buddha described the untrained mind as a monkey, leaping from branch to branch, restless and insatiable. In our time, the monkey has found even more branches, endless scrolling, constant updates, information without pause. Each leap gives a momentary thrill, but leaves us more exhausted than before. And like the monkey, we mistake movement for freedom, when in truth we are caught in endless restlessness. Think of the last time you tried to sit quietly without reaching for anything. No phone, no music, no conversation. How long did it take before your mind grew restless, before you felt the pull to do something, anything? This is the addiction to noise. We mistake the discomfort of withdrawal for proof that silence is unnatural, when in truth it is simply the mind remembering how to rest. Like water stirred by wind, it takes time to settle, but once it does, clarity appears. Noise is not only external. Even when the world around us is still, the inner noise continues. The replay of old conversations, the worry about tomorrow, the endless list of tasks and plans. This is why silence cannot be found only by turning off the outer world. True silence comes when we meet the inner noise with awareness, when we stop feeding every restless thought, when we choose to rest in the space between them. The Buddha once asked his disciples a riddle: "Without speaking, without silence, can you tell me the truth?" It seems impossible at first, but the teaching is clear. Truth does not lie in words, nor in the absence of words, but in the awareness that sees both. The same is true of noise. Peace does not mean the world will never be loud. It means you discover the quiet within you that is never disturbed by sound. You may begin to notice this in small ways. The next time you are surrounded by noise, a busy street, a crowded cafe, even the chatter of your own thoughts, pause for a moment. Instead of focusing on the noise, Shift your attention to the awareness that hears it. Notice that this awareness itself is silent, untouched. Like the open sky, it allows the storm of sound to pass through without resistance. This is the silence that cannot be taken from you. Tonight, as you lie down, notice how much noise you have carried with you from the day. Let it rise and fall like distant echoes. Then gently turn your attention to the quiet space between the sounds, between the thoughts. Rest there, even for a breath. In that space, you will discover a silence more nourishing than any distraction, a silence that is not empty but alive with presence. And in that silence, you may remember what the world so often makes us forget, that peace is your natural state, waiting patiently beneath the noise. There is a practice in Buddhism known as noble silence. At first, the phrase can sound unusual, even puzzling. What makes silence noble? We are so used to thinking of silence as emptiness, as absence, as something that happens when nothing else is present. But in the Buddhist tradition, silence is not a void, it is a presence. It is not the lack of sound, but the fullness of awareness that arises when words fall away. Silence becomes noble when it is held with intention, when it becomes a space for truth, compassion, and clarity to emerge. In monasteries, noble silence is often practiced after evening prayers or during meditation retreats. The community agrees not to speak, not to engage in casual conversation, not even to whisper. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, almost oppressive. The urge to speak rises strongly, the restlessness grows louder, and the mind searches desperately for a way to fill the space. But as hours pass, something miraculous begins to unfold. The noise subsides, the body softens, the heart grows receptive, and the silence, once intimidating, reveals itself as a vast and nourishing presence. This silence is not empty, it is alive. Within it, you begin to hear things you never noticed before: the rustle of leaves outside your window, the rhythm of your own heartbeat, the subtle dance of breath moving in and out. You begin to feel things more deeply: the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the texture of food as you eat, the quiet joy of simply being alive. Silence sharpens the senses, not by adding more, but by allowing you to notice what has always been there. Noble silence also reveals the noise we carry inside. When the outer world grows quiet, the inner chatter becomes more obvious. Old memories rise, buried emotions surface, unhealed wounds make themselves known. At first, this can feel overwhelming, as if silence makes things worse. But this is only the mind showing us what has been hidden beneath the noise. The silence itself is not creating the pain, it is simply uncovering what was already there, waiting to be acknowledged. And in this uncovering, healing begins. The strength of noble silence is that it teaches us to befriend what arises. Instead of drowning it out with distraction, we allow it to be seen, to be felt, to be heard. We bow to it gently, as we would to a guest, and in doing so, we discover that much of what we feared is less frightening than we imagined. The grief, once met, begins to soften. The anger, once acknowledged, begins to release. The loneliness, once embraced, transforms into solitude, into the recognition that we are never truly alone when we are present with ourselves. This is why silence is called noble. It gives us back our own lives. It returns us to ourselves. It shows us that beneath all the layers of noise, beneath all the rushing and striving, there is a stillness that cannot be broken. And from this stillness, wisdom flows naturally, like a clear spring emerging from the earth. You do not need to live in a monastery to taste noble silence. You can practice it wherever you are. Try setting aside a few minutes each day where you do not speak, do not reach for your phone, do not fill the space with music or distraction. Simply sit, breathe, and listen. Notice the silence beneath the sounds. Notice the awareness that holds it all. At first it may feel restless, but with patience, the silence will begin to reveal its gifts. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, let yourself enter into a small moment of noble silence. Turn off the noise, close your eyes, and sit with yourself. Let the thoughts rise and fall without judgment. Let the breath anchor you in the present. Feel how the silence holds you, not as emptiness, but as presence, as care. This silence is not something to fear. It is the doorway to peace. And as you rest in it, you may discover that it is not silence at all, but the sound of your own true self finally being heard. There is a quiet moment of power in every life, the decision to turn the noise down. We live in a world that constantly invites us to keep turning the volume higher, more voices, more images, more distractions. The world says, stay connected, stay updated, stay entertained, stay busy. And yet somewhere deep within us, a quieter voice whispers something else. Slow down, rest, breathe, listen. That voice is the gatekeeper of stillness, reminding us that peace does not come from adding more, but from allowing less. Noise in itself is not the enemy. Music can uplift, conversation can heal, even the hum of the city can carry a rhythm of life. But when noise is constant, when it fills every corner of our day, it leaves no space for us to hear ourselves. We lose the ability to notice the subtle messages of the body, the soft nudges of intuition, the delicate unfolding of the present moment. To turn down the noise is to create space for these whispers to be heard again. Sometimes, the simplest choice becomes the most radical. To leave the phone in another room for an evening, to eat a meal without the distraction of screens, to walk outside without headphones, letting the wind and birdsong be enough. These are not acts of deprivation. They are acts of nourishment, small invitations to return to the rhythm of life as it is, unfiltered by endless layers of sound and chatter. When we choose to lower the noise, we begin to notice how much of our restlessness comes not from life itself, but from overstimulation. We realize that the constant flood of impressions keeps us in a state of subtle agitation, always half ready for the next demand, the next update, the next interruption. Turning down the noise is like stepping out of a crowded market into a quiet forest. The body exhales, the heart slows, the mind remembers its natural pace. This does not mean withdrawing from the world or rejecting its voices. It means choosing consciously when and how to engage. Just as you would not invite every stranger into your home, you do not need to invite every sound, every message, every distraction into your inner sanctuary. You can choose to open the door when it brings nourishment and to close it when it brings disturbance. This is not selfishness, it is care. It is honoring the sacredness of your own peace. The Buddha often taught about moderation, the middle way between indulgence and denial. To turn down the noise is not to seek absolute silence in every moment, but to walk the middle path, to enjoy sound when it nourishes, and to release it when it overwhelms, to savor the laughter of a friend, but also to cherish the quiet of your own breath, to sing when the heart is full, and to listen when the heart needs stillness. This balance is what makes life whole. Perhaps tonight, you might try a small experiment. As you lie in bed, turn off the television, put aside your phone, and let the room be as quiet as it wishes to be. At first, the silence may feel strange, even uncomfortable. Thoughts may rush in to fill it, like guests who cannot stand an empty room. But stay with it, breathe with it. Feel how, slowly, the silence becomes softer, more welcoming. Feel how, beneath the surface restlessness, there is a spaciousness that begins to open. Each time you choose quiet over noise, you are strengthening the muscle of awareness. You are reminding yourself that peace is not something to be found in the outer world, but something to be uncovered within. The more you practice, the more you realize that silence is not absence at all. It is presence. It is the space in which everything else can breathe. So rest tonight with this gentle reminder. The power to turn down the noise is always yours. Even in a loud world, you can choose quiet. Even in a busy life, you can choose stillness. And in that choice, you rediscover the peace that was never lost, only hidden beneath the volume of the world. Silence is not just the absence of noise, it is a refuge, a home you can return to again and again, no matter where you are. In a world that never stops speaking, silence waits patiently, like a friend who never leaves, like a temple that is always open. The world will always offer noise voices calling for your attention, responsibilities pulling you forward, memories tugging from behind, but silence offers something else, a chance to simply be, without demand, without expectation, without the need to perform or prove. When you begin to touch silence, truly touch it, you discover that it is not empty at all. It is rich, full, alive with presence. It is in silence that you hear the steady rhythm of your heart, the whisper of your breath, the quiet wisdom that has been waiting beneath the surface of all your distractions. Silence does not erase life's challenges, but it gives you the strength to meet them without drowning in the noise they create. It is the calm eye of the storm, the still center from which clarity flows. The Buddha often described nirvana not as some faraway heaven, but as the extinguishing of noise, the noise of craving, the noise of aversion, the noise of confusion. To step into silence is to taste a small piece of that freedom, to feel the possibility of a life not ruled by endless chatter, but guided by awareness and peace. This silence is not fragile. It does not depend on the world being quiet. Even in the middle of chaos, even in the busiest street or the loudest room, you can touch it. It is the silence within you, the part of you that simply observes, that remains untouched by sound, unchanged by the storm. Think of a candle burning in a dark room. Around it, shadows move and voices rise, but the flame itself is steady. Silence is that flame within you. It is always there, even if the world around you flickers wildly. When you turn inward, when you rest your awareness on the breath, you discover the flame again. You realize that no matter how loud the world becomes, silence is never lost, it is only forgotten. This is why silence is a true refuge, not a place you visit once in a while, but a home you can return to every day. Each time you sit quietly, each time you breathe with awareness, each time you choose not to feed the noise, you step back into that home. And in that home, you are safe, you are whole, you are free. Perhaps tonight, as you close your eyes, you might imagine yourself stepping into a temple of silence. Inside, the air is calm, the walls are still, the space vast and open. You sit down gently, and in the stillness you begin to feel your own presence, your own aliveness. Thoughts may still drift in like distant voices, but they cannot disturb the silence of the temple. They pass, and you remain. Here, you do not need to do anything. You do not need to fix or change yourself. You only need to rest, to let the silence hold you. As you breathe softly, notice how the silence deepens. Notice how it nourishes you in ways noise never could. The tension in your body begins to ease. The restlessness in your mind begins to soften. The weight of the day begins to lift. You are returning home not to a place outside of you, but to the quiet sanctuary that has always lived within. So let this be your practice, to remember that silence is not far away. It is here, waiting in every breath, in every pause, in every moment when you choose not to add another layer of noise. And let this be your comfort. No matter how chaotic the world becomes, you always have a refuge. You always have a home. It is the silence of your own being, steady, vast, and full of peace. Rest in that silence tonight. Let it cradle you as you drift into sleep. And when you wake tomorrow, carry it with you into the noise of the world, knowing that beneath every sound, beneath every demand, the silence is still there, waiting to welcome you back. Have you ever arrived at a destination and realized you remember almost nothing about the journey that brought you there? Perhaps you drove home and, once you pulled into the driveway, felt a moment of unease. How did I get here? The turns, the stops, the details of the road vanished, lost in a fog of automatic movement. Or perhaps you ate a meal so quickly that you could hardly recall the taste, the texture, the smell. You were there, and yet you were not. Your body acted, your hands moved, but your mind was somewhere else. This is the illusion of automatic living. It is the sense that life is moving forward while we remain half absent, caught in thought, drifting in memory or imagination. We rise, we work, we eat, we rest, and yet much of it happens without us fully being there. Like a dream that feels vivid while we sleep, but slips away upon waking, entire days of our lives pass in this half-conscious haze. The Buddha called this forgetfulness. He taught that most of our suffering arises not from the events of life themselves, but from the fact that we are rarely truly present for them. Instead of living the moment as it is, we live the stories we tell about it. We replay yesterday's words, anticipate tomorrow's fears, escape into habits so practiced they carry us along without effort. In this way, we mistake motion for living. The body moves, but the spirit dozes. Automatic living can feel deceptively comfortable because it asks nothing of us. It allows us to go through the motions without the effort of awareness. Yet beneath the surface, it leaves us empty. Days blur into weeks, weeks into years, and we wake one morning to realize that we have been skimming across the surface of our lives instead of living them deeply. We have been running, but not arriving. We have been eating, but not tasting. We have been breathing, but not feeling the breath. There is a quiet sorrow in this realization, but also great hope. For the cure to automatic living is not complicated. It is as simple as waking up. Not the waking of the body from sleep, but the waking of the heart and mind into presence. The Buddha compared it to a person who has been sleepwalking, stumbling through the night. When they awaken, the same world is before them, but now it shines with clarity. The path they walk is the same, but now each step is alive. The first step in awakening from automatic living is simply to notice it, to catch yourself drifting, to pause in the middle of a meal and ask, am I tasting this bite, or am I lost in thought? To pause in the middle of a conversation and ask, am I truly listening, or am I rehearsing my response? To pause in the middle of a day and ask, am I here, or am I somewhere else? These small questions begin to break the trance. They remind us that life is not happening later, after we solve every problem or reach every goal. Life is happening now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this moment. Tonight, as you rest, reflect gently. How much of my day did I truly live? Not how much did I accomplish, not how much did I produce, but how much was I truly here for? Let this question be a lantern, not a burden. Let it illuminate the places where you drift and the places where you awaken. For every time you notice, every time you return, you step out of the illusion of automatic living and back into the wonder of life as it is. When we look closely at the rhythm of our days, we begin to see how much of life is carried not by intention but by habit. We wake and reach for our phone before our eyes are fully open. We pour coffee without tasting the water that first touches our lips. We move from task to task, not because we have chosen each one with care, but because patterns formed long ago carry us forward. These patterns are like grooves in the earth, carved deeper each time we walk the same path. Soon the path is so worn that we no longer need to choose it at all, we simply fall into it. This is the cycle of automatic living. Repetition without awareness. Habits can serve us, of course. They help us brush our teeth without effort, tie our shoes without thought, complete daily tasks without constant decision-making. But habits also carry us into suffering when they are left unexamined. The habit of reaching for distraction when we feel lonely, the habit of anger when we feel hurt, the habit of worry when faced with uncertainty. These grooves in the mind pull us along, even when we long to go another way. The Buddha compared this to a wheel rolling downhill. Once in motion, it gathers speed, carrying everything with it. Our thoughts and actions, when left unconscious, roll in the same way. A small irritation becomes anger. Anger becomes harsh words. Harsh words create regret. Regret feeds sorrow, and all of it unfolds automatically, almost as if we were passengers in our own lives. Awareness is the hand that reaches out and steadies the wheel, slowing it down, reminding us that we are not powerless. The cycle of habit is powerful because it is invisible. We rarely stop to ask, why am I doing this? Why am I thinking this way again? Instead, we assume this is simply who we are, the way life must be. But when awareness shines on a habit, it begins to loosen. A pause in the middle of a reaction reveals the choice hidden beneath it. In that pause we see clearly, I do not have to follow this path again. I can choose differently. Imagine a well-worn trail through a forest. You have walked it so many times that your feet know it by heart. But one day you stop, you look around, You notice another path, faint but present, winding off into the trees. At first it feels strange to step off the familiar trail. Your body resists, longing for the comfort of what it knows. But with each step on the new path, the trail becomes clearer, easier. And with time, the old trail grows over, no longer pulling you as strongly as before. This is how awareness reshapes habit, not through force, but through gentle redirection, step by step, moment by moment. To break the cycle of automatic living, you do not need to dismantle all your habits at once. Begin with one pause, one breath. The next time irritation rises, pause before the words spill out. The next time you reach for distraction, pause and ask, what am I avoiding right now? The next time worry begins its familiar loop, pause and place a hand on your heart. These pauses are seeds of freedom. Each one weakens the old groove and begins carving a new one. Tonight, as you rest, reflect on the habits that carried you through your day. Which ones served you, bringing peace or kindness? Which ones drained you, repeating patterns of suffering? Hold them gently, without judgment, as you would hold a child. Know that you are not bound to any of them forever. Habits are strong, yes, but awareness is stronger. And with each breath of mindfulness, you are already shaping a new path, already stepping out of the cycle of automatic living into the freedom of presence. There is a story often told by teachers of mindfulness about a cup of water. Imagine holding a glass clear to the brim. If someone bumps your arm, the water spills out, not because of the bump itself, but because the glass was already full. In the same way, when life jostles us, when someone speaks sharply, when plans unravel, when a small inconvenience arises, what spills out is whatever we were already carrying. If our hearts are filled with irritation, irritation spills. If they are filled with kindness, kindness spills. The bump only reveals what was within. This parable shows us the danger of automatic living. When we move through our days unconsciously, we allow our glasses to fill without noticing. We take in noise, stress, resentment, little drops here and there until the cup is brimming. Then the smallest disturbance causes us to overflow. We snap at a loved one, not because of what they did in that moment, but because our cup was already full of unexamined emotions. We feel overwhelmed by small setbacks, not because they are insurmountable, but because our minds were already heavy with accumulated burdens. Awareness is the simple act of noticing what fills the cup, to pause in the middle of the day and ask, what am I carrying right now? To place a hand on your chest and feel the weight, the tightness, the fullness. This pause does not empty the glass immediately, but it gives you the choice to stop pouring more into it. It allows you to put the glass down for a moment, to breathe, to remember that you are not powerless before the overflow. Automatic living keeps us blind to what we carry. We rush from one thing to the next, unaware that each drop adds to the weight. But mindfulness teaches us to stop, to hold the glass up to the light, to see clearly what is inside. And when we see clearly, we can begin to empty it. A single deep breath empties a little. A kind word to ourselves empties more. Allowing ourselves to release an old grievance, even slightly, creates space again. With practice, we learn not to walk through life with a cup brimming over, but with space for grace, space for peace. Imagine walking with a half-full cup instead of one filled to the edge. When someone bumps into you, there may be a ripple, but nothing spills. Their harsh words may disturb you, but you do not overflow. Their impatience may touch you, but it does not drown your peace. By living with awareness, by tending to what you carry, you create space within yourself. Space that makes you steady. Space that allows you to respond rather than react. The Buddha often spoke of this space as the difference between bondage and freedom. Bondage is being so full that you overflow automatically, reacting without choice. Freedom is having space within you, enough clarity to decide what to release and what to hold. This freedom does not come from controlling the world around you. It will always bump into you in ways large and small. Freedom comes from tending to your own cup, from remembering that you can choose what you allow to fill it. Tonight, as you lie quietly, imagine holding a glass in your hands. Look into it gently. What fills it now? Perhaps worry, perhaps fatigue, perhaps gratitude. Do not judge what you see. Simply notice. And with each breath, imagine pouring out what no longer serves you. With each exhale, let a little drain away, until the cup feels lighter, steadier, spacious once more. This is the heart of mindful living, not to eliminate every bump in life, but to care for what you carry, so that when life touches you, what spills out is peace. In the midst of automatic living, it is easy to believe that we are trapped, that once the wheel of habit has begun to spin, there is nothing we can do but follow its motion. But the truth is far gentler and far more hopeful. Freedom is never farther away than a single breath. The Buddha often reminded his students, awareness is always just one breath away. No matter how lost you feel, no matter how long you have been drifting, one breath is enough to return. Think of a moment when you felt swept away by the momentum of your thoughts. Perhaps anger rose and carried you into words you later regretted. Perhaps worry unfolded into stories about tomorrow that left your body tense and your heart weary. Perhaps sadness arrived and convinced you that it would never leave. In those moments, it feels as if the current is too strong, as if you have no choice but to be carried downstream. And yet, if you pause, even for the length of a single inhale, you create a space wide enough for freedom to enter. This is the miracle of the breath. It does not demand perfection. It does not ask for hours of practice. It asks only for presence, here and now. When you breathe consciously, you are no longer running on the tracks of habit. You step off the automatic path and return to life itself. The anger may still be there, the worry may still whisper, but they no longer own you. You are here, awake, steady enough to choose. The practice of one breath to return is deceptively simple. When you notice that you are lost in thought, lost in habit, lost in the trance of automatic living pause, breathe in, feeling the cool air entering. Breathe out, feeling the warmth leaving. That is all. In this breath, you have awakened. In this breath, you are home again. It may not seem like much at first. One breath, after all, is gone in a few seconds. But if you return to it again and again, you begin to notice its power. Like a match that lights a candle, each breath ignites awareness, bringing light back into a room that had grown dark. The more often you light this candle, the more naturally it burns. With practice, your life becomes filled with these small flames of awareness, illuminating moments that once passed unnoticed. Imagine being in the middle of a heated argument. The words are sharp, the emotions strong, but in the space of one breath, you pause. You feel the air move through your body. Suddenly, you have a choice. You can continue the old habit, adding more fuel to the fire, or you can choose silence, patience, compassion. That single breath gives you the space to decide. Or imagine lying awake at night, your mind circling through worries, one conscious breath, and you remember, I do not have to solve tomorrow tonight. I can be here, in this moment, with this breath. That small shift is enough to soften the heart, enough to open the door to rest. The beauty of this practice is that it is always available. No special place is required, no ritual, no preparation. Whether you are washing dishes, standing in line, sitting in traffic, or lying in bed, the breath is there, waiting. Each inhale says, I am alive now. Each exhale says, I release what I do not need. It is the simplest reminder and the most profound. Tonight, as you lie in stillness, you might try this. When the mind begins to wander, when thoughts pull you into the stories of the day, return to one breath. Inhale softly, whispering inwardly, I am here. Exhale gently, whispering, I let go. Repeat as many times as you wish. Let it carry you into sleep, one breath at a time. Automatic living is nothing more than forgetting. Mindful living is nothing more than remembering, and the bridge between the two is only as long as a breath. There is a phrase often used in Buddhist teaching, to wake up from the dream of life. At first it sounds mysterious, almost poetic, but its meaning is simple. Most of us spend much of our time half asleep, moving through our days as if in a dream, caught in habits, swept away by thoughts, barely present for the life unfolding in front of us. To wake up is not to leave the world, it is to return to it fully. It is to open your eyes and see clearly what has always been here. Automatic living is like a dream in which you repeat the same patterns again and again. You walk, you speak, you act, but without full awareness. You miss the colors of the sunrise, the warmth of a friend's smile, the taste of your own meal, because your mind is elsewhere, lost in yesterday or racing toward tomorrow. In this way, entire years can pass without you truly being alive for them. You may have been busy, productive, even successful, but beneath it all, a quiet ache remains, the ache of having lived without truly being awake. The Buddha called this state ignorance, not in the sense of lack of intelligence, but in the sense of ignoring the reality of the present moment. We ignore what is here by clinging to what has already passed, or fearing what has not yet come. We ignore the miracle of this breath, this step, this heartbeat, and so life becomes a dream we sleepwalk through, always just out of reach. To awaken from this dream is not to change everything about your outer life. You do not need to move to a monastery, or abandon your responsibilities, or seek some exotic practice. Awakening happens right where you are, in the midst of ordinary life. It begins the moment you choose to pay attention. When you truly listen to the sound of rain, instead of letting it fade into the background, you awaken. When you taste your food fully, instead of swallowing it absent-mindedly, you awaken. When you look into the eyes of someone you love and are fully there, without distraction, you awaken. The difference between sleepwalking and waking is not dramatic. It is subtle, but it changes everything. Like adjusting a lens, the world suddenly comes into focus. You realize that what you were searching for, peace, joy, meaning, was not hidden in some distant future. It was here all along, waiting beneath the haze of habit. The path of awakening is a path of remembering to pause, remembering to breathe, remembering that this moment is the only life you have, the only place where peace can be found. You may forget again and again, falling back into the dream of automatic living. But each time you remember, each time you wake for even a single breath, you strengthen the habit of awareness. Slowly, the dream loses its hold, and the waking world grows brighter. Think of your life as a series of moments. Each moment is like a pearl, unique and luminous. When you live unconsciously, the pearls fall unnoticed to the ground, lost forever. But when you are present, you gather them, stringing them together into a necklace of lived experience, a life of meaning and depth. Awakening is simply the act of gathering your moments, treasuring them, refusing to let them slip away unnoticed. Tonight, as you rest, imagine the dream of automatic living dissolving around you. See yourself waking gently, as if from a long sleep. The colors grow brighter, the air feels fresher, the body feels more alive. You realize that nothing outside has changed, only your awareness has returned. And in that return, life itself returns to you. So let this be your practice, to awaken again and again, not once and for all, but moment by moment, breath by breath, to notice when you are drifting and to smile softly as you return. To live not as a sleepwalker, but as one who is fully alive, fully present, fully awake. And let this be your comfort. No matter how long you have been dreaming, you can always wake up, even now, even here. All it takes is one breath, one step, one moment of awareness. And in that moment, you are free. Between every experience and your response to it, there is a space. It may be small, almost invisible, but it is always there. The Buddha often pointed to this space as the very heart of freedom. Life presents us with endless moments. Someone speaks harshly, a memory stirs, fear rises in the chest, and almost instantly we react. Words leap out before we have chosen them. Emotions spill over before we understand them. Actions unfold before we have considered their weight. This is automatic living in its most painful form, reaction without choice. But in truth, we are never bound to react immediately. In every moment, there is a pause, a breath, a silence, a stillness where freedom waits. Think of the last time anger flared inside you. Perhaps someone cut you off in traffic, or dismissed your feelings, or reminded you of an old wound. The heat rose quickly, words gathered on your tongue, and before you knew it, you were caught in the fire. Yet if you look closely, you may remember that there was a split second before the flame took hold. A moment when you felt the anger rise, but had not yet spoken or acted. That was the pause. In that pause, the seed of freedom was present. In that pause, another choice was possible. The pause does not erase what has happened. The driver may still be reckless. The words may still sting. The memory may still ache. But the pause changes your relationship with it. Instead of being swept away, you can breathe. Instead of reacting blindly, you can see clearly. Instead of adding more suffering, you can choose compassion, patience, or silence. The pause is the doorway from bondage to freedom, from reactivity to wisdom. This is why the practice of mindfulness is often described as expanding the pause. With awareness, what once felt like an instant between stimulus and response begins to open into spaciousness. You notice the tightening of your jaw before you speak. You notice the quickening of your breath before you lash out. You notice the story forming in your mind before you believe it. In this way, awareness stretches the pause, giving you room to choose with care. At first, the pause may feel too small to catch. The reaction seems faster than you can see, but with practice, the pause grows. Like a photographer who trains their eye to capture fleeting light, you learn to notice the subtle moment between feeling and reaction, and once you see it, you realize it has always been there, waiting for you. Tonight, as you rest, reflect gently on this truth. In every moment of your life, there is a pause. No matter how strong the emotion, no matter how sudden the event, the space is there. You may not always catch it, but it is never lost. And with each breath of awareness, you grow more able to enter it. The pause is not far away. It is here, as close as your next breath, holding within it the possibility of peace. Learning to trust the pause is like learning to trust a bridge made of air. At first, it feels fragile, almost impossible. We are so used to reacting instantly, so accustomed to believing that the first surge of thought or emotion must be obeyed, that pausing feels unnatural. Silence feels awkward. Waiting feels dangerous. The mind insists, if I don't react now, I'll lose my chance. If I don't defend myself right away, I'll be crushed. If I don't answer immediately, I'll fall behind. But this urgency is an illusion. The pause does not weaken us, it strengthens us. It does not rob us of power, it returns power to us. Think of how often regret is born from the absence of a pause. Words we cannot take back, choices we did not consider, doors we closed too quickly. These regrets remind us that reaction without reflection often leads to suffering. Now think of the times when you did pause, when you breathed before speaking, when you chose silence instead of argument, when you allowed a moment of stillness before acting. Do you remember the relief? Do you remember the clarity that emerged, the way wisdom slipped quietly into that space? That is the gift of trusting the pause. The pause is not passivity. It is not inaction. It is the most powerful action of all, the action of awareness. In the pause, you are not running blindly with habit. You are not a puppet pulled by the strings of anger, fear, or desire. You are awake. You are present. And in presence, you can respond instead of react. The pause is not a void. It is fertile ground where choice grows. Imagine standing by a river in flood. The water rushes past, carrying branches, mud, debris. If you step in blindly, you will be swept away. But if you stand on the bank and pause, you see clearly. You notice the currents, the dangers, the safe places to step. You wait for the right moment, and then you cross with steadiness. The river is the mind, filled with rushing thoughts and emotions. The pause is the bank, the place of safety where you can see clearly before you step. At first, entering the pause may feel small, like a single breath before a storm. But with practice, it grows into a spacious refuge. You begin to see that silence is not emptiness but strength, that stillness is not weakness but clarity. You learn to trust that waiting a moment will not harm you, that breathing before reacting will not make you lose, but instead help you win the only victory that matters, the victory over your own suffering. Tonight, as you lie in the quiet, reflect on the pauses of your day. Where did you rush when you might have waited? Where did you react when you might have breathed? Where did you trust the pause, and what did it give you? Do not judge your answers, simply notice them, polishing the mirror of your awareness. Then, as you breathe now, imagine expanding the pause in your life, little by little, each breath a space, each space a freedom. Trust the pause, dear one. It is not a weakness, it is your doorway to peace. One of the most beautiful discoveries in the practice of pausing is that the pause does not push emotions away, it welcomes them. Often, we are afraid of our own feelings. We fear that if we stop running, if we stop distracting ourselves, the sadness, anger, or grief we have avoided will swallow us whole. And so, we keep moving, keep talking, keep filling the silence with noise. But the pause is not an enemy of emotions, it is their host. It is the space in which they can finally arrive, be seen, and eventually soften. The Buddha compared emotions to visitors knocking at the door of the heart. Anger knocks, fear knocks, grief knocks. Most of the time, we respond in one of two ways. We either slam the door shut and pretend no one is there, or we fling it open and let the visitor take over the whole house. Neither brings peace, but in the pause, we discover a third way. We open the door gently, bow to the visitor, and say, "I see you. You may sit here for a while, but you may not control me." Imagine anger arriving at your gate. Without the pause, it storms inside, filling your voice, tightening your body, spilling into words that wound. But with the pause, you notice it at the threshold. You feel the heat in your chest, the quickening of your breath. You say inwardly, "Hello, anger, I know you are here." Already the fire cools. By acknowledging it, you have transformed the relationship. Anger is no longer a master controlling you. It is a guest sitting at your table, allowed but not obeyed. The same is true of grief. Without pause, we resist it, distract ourselves, deny its presence. But grief, unacknowledged, lingers like heavy fog. In the pause, we feel it fully. The ache in the heart, the tears welling up. We whisper, "Yes, grief, I see you. Come, sit with me." And though the ache remains, it begins to move. Tears flow, the weight loosens, and the heart breathes again. By welcoming grief into the pause, we allow it to teach us the depth of our love, the tenderness of our humanity. Fear, too, changes in the pause. Without pause, fear becomes panic, propelling us into choices that shrink our lives. But with pause, we breathe into it. We feel the trembling in the body, the tightness in the stomach. We say, "Hello, fear. Thank you for trying to protect me. But I will walk forward with care, not with panic." And fear, like a child reassured, quiets enough for courage to step forward. The pause is not a prison for emotions, it is a sanctuary. It is where we meet them, not with rejection or blind obedience, but with presence. We bow to them as teachers, learning what they have come to show us. Anger reveals where our boundaries were crossed. Grief shows us how deeply we loved. Fear points to what we value most. When we meet them in the pause, they are no longer enemies to fight, but messengers to hear. Tonight, as you lie in stillness, You might notice what emotions are knocking at your door. Do not push them away, and do not let them take over. Instead, breathe and pause. Imagine opening the door gently and inviting them to sit. Say inwardly, I see you, anger. I see you, grief. I see you, fear. Let them rest beside you, but not within you. Let them speak, but not command. In this way, you honor their presence without losing yourself to them. This is the gift of the pause. It transforms emotions from masters into guests, from tormentors into teachers. And in welcoming them with awareness, you discover the deepest truth of all. You are not your anger. You are not your grief. You are not your fear. You are the host. You are the space that holds them all. You are the pause itself. The pause is not only a refuge where emotions can rest, it is also a crossroads, a place where you can decide which path to take next. Without the pause, life feels like a single road, fixed and unchangeable, carrying you along whether you wish it or not. Anger rises, and you lash out. Fear appears, and you shrink. Desire surfaces, and you chase. In this way, habit drives you forward, repeating old patterns again and again. But in the pause, a door opens. Suddenly you see that you are not bound to one path. You can choose again. You can step into wisdom instead of habit, compassion instead of anger, patience instead of haste. Think of a time when you reacted quickly, only to regret it later. Perhaps you sent a message in frustration, only to wish you had waited. Perhaps you raised your voice, only to feel the sting of guilt afterward. In those moments, the absence of a pause narrowed your vision. You saw only one option, one inevitable reaction. But imagine if you had paused, even for a breath. The space would have widened. You might have noticed another choice: to stay silent, to soften your words, to listen instead of defend. The pause does not erase difficulty, but it opens possibility. This is why the Buddha often spoke of the middle way, the path that lies between extremes, visible only when we step back from automatic reaction. In the pause, we see that we do not have to swing toward anger or collapse into silence, toward craving or toward denial. We can find the balance point, the response that brings peace instead of suffering. But balance cannot be seen when we rush. It is revealed only in the stillness of the pause. Imagine standing at a fork in the road. One path is well-worn, familiar, carved by years of habit. The other is faint, grass still growing over it, because you have rarely walked there. Without pause, your feet automatically choose the familiar trail, even if it leads to suffering. But when you pause, you notice the second path. It may feel uncertain, even uncomfortable, but it is there waiting for you to choose. Each time you step onto it, it grows clearer. Each time you pause and choose wisely, you strengthen the habit of freedom. This practice is not about always choosing perfectly. Even with awareness, you will sometimes step back into old grooves. But the pause teaches you that perfection is not required. What matters is remembering that you always have the chance to begin again. Each pause is a reset, a fresh invitation to choose differently. And over time, the pauses string together like beads on a necklace, forming a life lived with intention rather than habit. Tonight, as you prepare to sleep, you might reflect on the crossroads of your day. Where did you react without pausing? Where did you remember to stop, even for a breath, and choose differently? Do not judge yourself for the moments you missed. Instead, celebrate the moments you caught. Each one is evidence of your growing awareness, your growing freedom. Then, as you breathe now, imagine yourself standing at tomorrow's crossroads. See yourself pausing, looking around, choosing the path that brings peace. Feel the confidence in that choice. Feel the strength in that freedom. The pause is not the end of the journey. It is the place where journeys begin. In it, you discover that your life is not a single road written by your past. It is a living path, unfolding moment by moment, shaped by the choices you make when you remember to stop, to breathe, to choose again. The pause is not meant to be rare, a jewel glimpsed only in meditation halls or on quiet retreats. It is meant to weave itself into the fabric of daily life, as natural as breathing, as ordinary as walking. Each pause is a reminder that you are alive, that you are free, that you need not be carried by habit or drowned in noise. With every pause, the heart loosens its grip, the mind clears, and the body remembers its natural rhythm. In this way, the pause becomes not an interruption to living, but the very space that makes true living possible. When we forget to pause, life rushes by in a blur. We eat without tasting, speak without listening, move without noticing. But when we pause, even for a breath, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The taste of tea becomes profound. The warmth of sunlight feels like a gift. The sound of a loved one's laughter fills the whole room with joy. These moments are not rare, they are everywhere, waiting behind the veil of distraction. The pause is the key that lifts the veil. The practice of pausing also frees us from the burden of perfection. So often we live under the weight of expectation to be strong, to be successful, to always know the right answer. But in the pause, we remember that we are human, that we are allowed to stop, to breathe, to not know for a moment. The pause does not demand achievement, it invites presence. And in presence, we find that being is enough. The more you practice, the more the pause becomes your home. At first, you may remember it only in rare moments during meditation, perhaps, or when life slows down. But over time, it slips into the spaces of your day. Before you speak, a pause. Before you judge, a pause. Before you rush, a pause. These small pauses, like drops of water, gather into a river of awareness that carries you through life with steadiness and grace. The Buddha taught that liberation is not found in some distant place, but here, in the quality of each moment. The pause is where this teaching becomes real. It is where we lay down the heavy armor of reactivity and open to the gentle strength of awareness. It is where suffering loosens and peace takes root. To live with pauses is to live with freedom, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom in the midst of it. As you rest tonight, let yourself enter this freedom. Close your eyes and take a single breath. Feel the pause at the top of the inhale, the pause at the bottom of the exhale. Rest in those spaces, however brief. Let them remind you that silence is not emptiness, but fullness. That stillness is not weakness, but strength. That each pause holds within it the possibility of a new beginning. And as you drift into sleep, carry this truth with you. Your life is not measured by how much you do, how quickly you move, or how perfectly you perform. It is measured by the depth of your presence, by the pauses that allow you to live fully, breathe deeply, and love openly. The pause frees you, not by changing the world, but by changing the way you meet it. Tomorrow will bring its noise, its demands, its surprises. But tomorrow will also bring countless pauses, countless chances to return, countless opportunities to choose peace. Remember, you do not need to wait for the perfect moment. The pause is here, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this silence. Step into it again and again, and you will find that freedom was never far away. It was here all along, waiting patiently in the pause that frees you. Dear friend, we have walked together through many reflections, many pauses, many moments of quiet truth. Perhaps along the way, something has softened in you, a thought released, a breath remembered, a seed of compassion watered. If so, then this journey has already done its work. I want to thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for being here. Your presence, your willingness to listen, your openness to explore these teachings, this is what gives them life. Without you, these words are only sound. With you, they become practice, they become transformation, they become peace. If these gentle moments have nourished you, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, not as a duty, not as another item on your list, but as a way to keep reminding yourself to pause, to breathe, to return to what truly matters. Your support also gives me strength to continue creating and sharing, to keep offering these spaces of stillness in a world that can feel so loud. By subscribing, you help weave a community of kindness and awareness, a circle of souls walking this path together. As you go forward from here, may you carry with you the wisdom of the pause, the clarity of the mirror, the tenderness of compassion. May your body be healthy, your mind be spacious, and your heart be at peace. And may life surprise you again and again with its quiet beauty, the beauty that is always here when we are truly present. Thank you for walking with me. Until we meet again, may you be well, may you be safe, may you be free, and may all good things find their way to you.